No one got into the rental property investing game because they wanted to spend too much time on it. And time equals money, and that time is the amount of money that you can put into your money gun and tell people on the internet how they can save more time by using your time to do that. What's up everyone? My name's Avery and I like making a lot of money, but I also don't like wasting or utilizing a lot of my time in order to do that. And I'm also a real estate agent and investor in the Durham, North Carolina area, and in today's video I'm going to go over how I automate a lot of my rental property business and how you can do that too while you're doing your management and save yourselves a lot of time. I have 6 items that I'm going to go over today that can make your rental property business management a lot easier and give yourselves a lot more time back so you can do the things that you want. But before we do that, I appreciate it if you would scroll down and make that thumbs up button blue. Number 1, and this is the easiest, most obvious one, would be rental collection online. A lot of people are collecting the rent online these days because there's so many options to do so, and a lot of those options are free. No more do you have to do what they did in the old days, drive to go pick up your checks from your tenants, potentially those checks bounce, or they could mail those checks to you and those checks bounce, collecting cash, really just anything to do with you being in person or someone sending it via mail and you don't know if that money will actually make into your bank account in time for you to pay that mortgage. Collecting rent online is very simple because you can do it from the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to think about it and you can automate it as well, and your tenants can automate it too so they don't have to worry about not accidentally paying their rent, and you can both do it from the comfort of your couch and not really think about it. There are a ton of platforms in order for you to do this, some paid, some not, so depending on the number of units you have, you can use one or the other. Personally, I just use apartments.com because I don't have hundreds of units yet, so it's a really simple, easy platform and it is free for you to use. The way apartments.com makes money is essentially through applications, so if you're listing your property through apartments.com, a tenant will have to pay $35 in order to apply for that apartment, and that's how they're making their money. The other great thing about these platforms is you can set everything up online. You don't have to go do anything. You can just send them an invite link and then they can set up automatic payments for the first or a couple days before. They can also do non-automated payments, but typically people like the ability to just go ahead and do an automatic payment so they don't actually have to think about going to pay that rent. The other great thing here is you can have that money automatically go into a bank account that is associated with that property and do anything else that you need to do after that, which is maybe pay bills, other expenses, or make some of that cash flow and utilize it for other things. Side note that is also really helpful for me here is having separate bank accounts for property. So I have a bank account for each property. That way I can just compartmentalize everything and know what expenses and what income is associated with each specific building. Number 2 would be automating your bills as well as your mortgage. As I just alluded to, when you're receiving that rent online, it goes straight into that bank account associated with that property. And typically you're going to have some expenses associated with that property. Most notably would be your mortgage. Other things could be utilities, maybe you're paying for internet, or other types of expenses that could incur throughout the month. Mortgage and utilities are going to be the easiest to automate because typically those are set up on a set schedule. You might have other things like maintenance that you'll have to manually put together and manually pay someone for. But with that mortgage, you set it up to pay on, let's say, the 10th of the month, which is typically what I do because that's enough time for your tenant to pay on the 1st, it to go through these processing platforms for it to show up in your bank account, and then you to actually pay that money because your mortgage company isn't going to create a late fee on your account if you pay before the 15th of the month. So I find the 10th of the month works pretty well. Same thing here goes for utilities. For most of my long-term rentals, I pay the water bill because there are multiple units within the building and it costs a lot of money to split out the water. For my Airbnbs, I do pay that electric or gas bill as well. So it's much easier to just automate all of these. If you can put them on a credit card, you can at least earn some points while you do it. If you don't want to, then you can just set it up automatic pay on that bank account. So whichever one's easier, but essentially you're just getting that money in through the rent and it is showing up in the bank account and it is paying those expenses, and you've just set this all up automatically and not had to think about any of it. The third thing that actually took me quite a while to set up and automate would be using some sort of expense accounting software. And for example, I use one called Rentastic, and essentially instead of manually putting in all of my accounting throughout the year, I just automatically have those bank accounts linked with this software, and then it sets up those specific charges and I can put them into various buckets, and then I know exactly where I'm spending my money for which property, and I can have it all in one spot. Now, if you don't want to use some automated software like this because you want to pay attention to it, and also all of the associated features with this software are not free, but for 2 properties it is free, and then also you get most of the features that you would want to use. Maybe not some of those automations. You could just use a Google Sheets or Excel file. If you're doing that though, make sure you stick on top of it. When I would do this, I would do something very simple where I'd have the date, the category, and the dollar amount that I spent. So if it was November 30th and I had a dryer that had to get fixed and it cost $200, I would just put those in each category and it would be as simple as that. With that, it can get tricky if you do get very lazy because you want to stay on top of it, because come the end of the year, you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours figuring out how much money you actually spent. If you just do it once a week, it can save you a lot of time and you can keep up with it, and theoretically you won't have that many expenses anyway. Of course, if you have a short-term rental or Airbnb, you're gonna have significantly more expenses to account for than you would if a long-term rental. The fourth one, and I think this one solves a lot of problems before we talk about anything associated with the actual management, before we even have a tenant in, would be fixing a lot of issues up front. The biggest thing that is a real headache for most real estate investors, what causes people to be annoyed, what causes people to not want to get in the first place, are maintenance calls and people calling you about issues that you don't want to hear about and just make you stressed to deal with. Dealing with houses totally for sure is stressful because it's kind of annoying to hear that something broke, you have to fix something, you have to call someone, coordinate stuff not only with yourself and that vendor, as well as with the tenants, getting them in there, out, all of that good stuff. So it can sound kind of overwhelming if you don't have good systems in place. But before we even get to those systems, let's just talk about fixing all of those maintenance issues up front. So what I typically like to do when I purchase a property is take care of anything that seemed like a major issue. So there could be some janky electric, some bad plumbing, or some other things that I know are going to be big issues like old faucets, bad stuff, you know, really anything that could go wrong. If you just update those things right away, all at once in one due time, then you don't have to worry about those later on and getting calls late at night thinking that something is going to go wrong, knowing that you had already fixed a lot of those issues. The fifth thing, and this plays along with fixing those issues at first, is creating a vendor list. So when something does go wrong, you do have those people that you can count on that you know will do a good job and show up. Typically, you're going to want to have someone like a handyman, a plumber, electrician, and that's going to cover a majority of things. If you have something that's a bigger issue like a roof or siding or windows being replaced, this is going to take longer anyway and not be something that's needed to be fixed most likely right away. But at least those things might be easier to find if you're just on Google or something like that. It can be really difficult to find really solid electricians or really solid handymen. Handyman is definitely the most difficult because they can be really expensive, maybe unreliable, and also potentially just do a bad job. And once you have those really good people, try to at least get 2 of each. Not always possible. Keep that written down, because there's been times that I've had a great person come in that maybe did something once for me 3 years ago and I've completely forgotten who they were, and eventually I can figure out who they were after 30 or 40 minutes of going through text messages or emails, but it would have been nicer if I just had it written down somewhere. The sixth and final thing that you can do is make sure that you have some type of lockbox or smart lock on the property so you can let vendors in and out so you never have to go there. Personally, I own property that's over 1,000 miles away from me that I still manage because I don't really see the value in having a property manager at this point. I did all of the things that I have listed here, and I don't typically have that many issues or that many things to deal with. This past weekend, actually, I did have a dryer vent that was all messed up, or actually just a dryer, so I had to have an electrician come in, change out the wiring, and get it all fixed up. But that really didn't take too much more than a couple texts between me and the tenant and me and the electrician. So I don't know if a property manager would do much more than that, and I'd also have to pay them in order to do that kind of thing. But in order to let those vendors in, if you want to get your heat serviced, AC serviced, or someone's changing out a toilet, you need to have some type of smart lock or lockbox for those people to get in. So typically I'll just have some type of lockbox with a key that gets every single door in the entire property, and they can get in no problem. As long as the tenant's aware, then it's going to be a really easy situation because you don't want to have to drive to that property every time you need to let somebody in. And a lot of the time as well, the tenant's going to be there anyway, but typically people have jobs and they're going there during the day while these people are making these fixes and making sure these issues no longer happen in your property. So you do want to be able to let them in any times of the day when it works for them and being able to fix that issue quickly. And a seventh and bonus one is making sure you have really fantastic tenants because you screen them well and you do not have to deal with a bunch of annoying things that are happening, and they're just good people and you treat them well, which I think is very important. And having good tenants who you treat well means they'll stay in the property for longer and they'll treat your stuff well as well. There you have it. Those are some great ways for you to automate your rental property management. Rental property investing can be difficult for a lot of people because they think there are a ton of issues and a ton of work. Now, it is not 100% passive income, but you can make it a lot more automated and passive than it potentially could be, because if you did none of this stuff, it could definitely be a full-time job. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and if you want to learn more about real estate investing or the agent business business, definitely hit that subscribe button. Or if you're trying to purchase or sell a property in the Triangle area of North Carolina, definitely hit me up and I'd be happy to help. So thanks again for watching, and more wealth is coming your way.